Welcome to Let's Talk About Leadership, Service, and Sisterhood,
a podcast sponsored by the California Rainbow for Girls,
an organization empowering young leaders to find their voice,
serve their community,
and gain lifelong sisters.
Membership is open to girls 8 through 12.
Learn more at gocarainbow.org.
Welcome back to Let's Talk About Leadership, Service, and Sisterhood, a podcast for teens by teens where we discuss topics that matter to us.
We are members of California IORG, a leadership and service organization for girls ages 11 to 20. In today's episode, we'll be talking about creating a place of acceptance.
For those of you who have never tuned in before, welcome. My name is Andi, and I am a member of California Rainbow in Vacaville Assembly and the co-producer of Let's Talk About Leadership, Service, and Sisterhood.
And I'm Kathy, a member of California Rainbow in San Buenaventura and producer of Let's Talk About Leadership, Service, and Sisterhood. Today, we are joined by fellow California Rainbow members. Y'all want to introduce yourself and Assembly?
Hi, my name is Kat, and I am from Visalia Assembly.
My name is Erika, and I am from Central Coast Assembly.
Hello and welcome. Let's get to it.
Okay, so our first question is, how can we promote open communication for honest and respectful conversations? For me, I think the best way to promote open communication is to be mindful when someone's talking to you. If someone's, like sharing something, especially something that is really vulnerable, it could be anything from asking how they can get better grades to asking for advice on maybe a toxic friendship, which are both things that I've helped with and had to have help with. Just honestly, like attentively listening and not just nodding your head and be like, oh yeah, like really being invested in the conversation and giving them your full attention. Even if you don't necessarily agree with what they're saying, you can get your opinion across in a respectful way. Just be like, yes, however, this is how I feel, and your opinion is completely valid. That's just my own take on it.
Yeah, I agree with that. The whole be open and give your full attention and engage. With me, it's about respect. If you're talk to someone else while I'm trying to talk to you or not seem invested in it, it's gonna make me feel like I can't come to you. So that's one way that I promote is I make sure that if someone's talking to me, I'm listening and I'm there for them in any way that they need me to be.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's really important to be emotionally available to whoever you're talking to and always make sure you're asking them for their opinions or ideas. And even if you don't necessarily like an idea of theirs, you don't want to shoot it down because it could discourage them from wanting to speak again.
I agree, but also for me, it mainly depends on who I'm talking to. Because for me, I'm the type of person that nods when they're talking and like attentively listens to them. When someone is going to me, I usually ask them, do they want a listening ear or do they want advice? Because I don't want to keep voicing my opinions when all they need is some company. And I voice my honest opinion when they ask me about some things. Doesn't mean I'm gonna shut them down, but it just means that I have to acknowledge how they view things and how I view things, and both respecting each other. But it still depends because some people are more sensitive than others. Sometimes I'm more sensitive, especially if I'm in the time of the month. So I kind of sugarcoat some things. It's like being the therapist friend, because sometimes I just don't want people's opinion. It's just me ranting, but they would give me solutions how they would solve issues. But the thing is, that's not how I solve them. So it just kind of conflicts sometimes.
I do the same thing. And if I need to vent to someone, I'll be like, I just need to vent. I don't want help. Or I'll be like, can you help me with this? I'm going to tell you and then you can give me help.
That brings us to our next question. What are good ways to practice active listening and be open to different points of view?
So I know that for me and a lot of other neurodivergent folks, It's really hard to listen with your whole body. I can't make eye contact when I'm listening to someone. So honestly, just making sure the person that you're talking to knows that you're listening, answering any questions that they have and not just saying, "Oh yeah, right. Yeah, right." Like putting in actual like thoughtful things, not always input because, when someone says, "Hey, I have a problem with," and then they give you the problem, we immediately start making our own assumptions and opinions. And a lot of the times, we're thinking about what we're going to say next rather than what this person is saying. So just not thinking about what we would do or our own opinion on it and, actively listening helps us understand different points of view. Because if you're thinking about what your opinion is, you're not going to hear someone else's. 90% of the times, you're just helping a friend out and you might not see eye to eye on everything.
I agree with that. I'm a teacher, and something that we do to like make it so that we know that they're listening is we don't necessarily want them to make eye contact with us. We don't really care what they're doing with their hands. All we really want them to do is have their eyes forward, like in our direction, and their belly buttons forward. We don't say bodies, we say belly buttons, so that we know that they're facing us. That means they're giving us their attention. That's what we use to like help with teaching and learning active listening. And then for me, I have to like play with something and fidget to be able to actively listen. And again, with agreeing with Andi about the whole like not really voicing your opinion when they're trying to voice their opinion, I think that's a big thing to set in stone before any big conversation with anybody. Like, hey, I don't really want any input. I just need to rant about this. Or, hey, can you give me your thoughts? Because I need opinions.
Yeah. The way I show that I'm actively listening to someone is I make sure to put my phone face down or screen down on table wherever I'm sitting. Sometimes I like to search something up on my phone if it pertains to the conversation, but I tend to get distracted, so I've started putting my phone face down. That way I'm not tempted to get distracted and not focus on whatever they're saying. And I think a good way to practice being open about different viewpoints is you have to be willing to take the initiative and be willing to learn about where they're coming from and what shaped them to have that viewpoint, you know?
I am currently a kindergarten teacher where I help with a lot of kids, and it all depends, in my opinion, on what's the age group and the type of person they are. Because for kids, some kids they require eyes, body, direction, and everything only to them, and they don't want you to be distracted in any ways. Whereas if it's my friends, they know I can't keep eye contact or else I'm not paying attention, and I'm too focused on keeping eye contact to even pay attention on what the conversation is. It's just the body posture with some people and how they view other people listening. For me, I'm at the age where I'm very needy on my parents' attention. So if my mom goes on her phone while we're talking and I'm telling her about my day, it just kind of shuts me down sometimes, where I want her full attention. But I know that's her way of paying attention. So it all depends. I think we all had great inputs on this.
Yes,
Yeah.
I like that we all had similar opinions. All right, so our next question is, how do we make sure we're including and celebrating diverse voices and backgrounds? So the first thing that comes to mind for me is we make sure that we're not like completely shutting down people who don't have the same beliefs as us. A great example is I'm Christian, so I believe in God and I read the Bible. My best friend, she's in between agnostic and atheist. She does not go to church and that's how she was raised. So she doesn't know pretty much anything about Christianity. And so there's some things that we don't necessarily agree on, but I'm not going to tell her like, "Oh, you're wrong," because I'm not going to disrespect her opinion and beliefs because it's rude. I can like tell her like this is what I believe without forcing her to believe it because too often I feel like we end up kind of shoving our own beliefs into other people's faces. We can talk about what we believe and we can share it with people, but let people talk, express their own beliefs with the same level of comfort that we would like for ourselves. So if she wants to talk to me about what she believes, I should think about if I was telling her something on the same topic about what I think, what level of understanding would I want from her?
I agree with that. Yeah. I have a similar situation with my best friend. She was raised in a Pentecostal church with her parents being the pastors. And I was raised Catholic, but like not a devoted Catholic. And then now I don't really go to church or practice a religion. So we have opposing opinions, but we don't really bring that up. But if we do, like I go to her church like once a month sometimes because I will sleep over at her house and like that's what her parents want me to do. And I'm just like, okay, out of respect. But with any topic I don't agree with someone else, I would voice my opinion, but I never like say, hey, you're wrong for believing this. You're wrong for
Yeah.
having this opinion. I just say, yeah, you have that opinion. I have this opinion. We have opposing opinions. There's no argument. There's no like major thing that comes out of it. We're just like, we agree to disagree. And I think that's important of like when you're like trying to talk with someone and you're wanting to like keep the whole openness of having diverse opinions and diverse conversations is if you voice your opinion, don't like expect you to be always right because sometimes you're not. And to them, you're not. To them, they have a different opinion. To yourself, you're right. But to them, you're not right.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's also really important that no matter this person's background, I think it's important we make sure they have an equal platform to share their own voice and opinions, and not to automatically assume someone won't have a different idea or opinion on something. Like, let's say you're having a Christmas party, but someone doesn't celebrate Christmas, but they have an idea to like put on a party for it. You don't want to automatically shut them down just because they don't celebrate it. They might have a really good idea, and unless you're willing to hear them out, you won't ever know if it's a really good idea or not.
Like a lot of the times we forget that opinions are opinions and they're not facts. And so we also have to remember that there's no right or wrong. There's just what you believe. You can believe as much as you want that your opinion is the only fact in the entire world. That's not the case for everyone else around you. And that's why a lot of arguments start because people forget that opinions are opinions and they're not facts.
Yeah.
Yeah. By
Yeah.
the end of it all, it's just our own opinions. It's not set in stones, especially with how we live. Like what Erica said, some people don't celebrate Christmas. For me, I have a very diverse friend group where most of them are actually Muslim or atheist, whereas I'm also Christian. So a way that I celebrate like our diversity is I acknowledge their backgrounds and what they believe in, and they do the same with me. So it's a mutual understanding and respect with each other's religion, but it doesn't mean like, oh, you're not allowed to do that because this is what we're supposed to do because this is my religion. So by the end of it, it really does come down to your own opinion. It doesn't mean someone's wrong or right. It's just your own personal belief. And to our next question, what are some cool ways to acknowledge and celebrate individual achievements and contribution?
Good question, actually. So always be humble when you're talking about yourself, but also don't undermine yourself. Like if you did something really cool, like brag about yourself a little bit, hype yourself up, but don't do it in a way that puts other people down. Because there's a really, really big difference between being like, oh, I got a 100% on my math test. Like, this is so awesome. And, oh, I bet I did better than all of you guys because I got a 100% on my math test. And I feel like a lot of people, when they hear the words be humble, they think, oh, like put your, like take yourself down like 7 notches whenever you're talking about yourself. Which don't do that at all because like if you did something cool, own it. Like flaunt it. Just be nice about it and hype your other friends up too. Like if your friend got like an 80, be like, you also did so awesome. It was a really hard test. If it was a group effort, make sure you're in acknowledging everyone in it. And also, if you find out that someone did something really cool, acknowledge them. And you're allowed to acknowledge yourself. You don't have to wait for someone to bring up your achievements. Just make sure that you do it at an appropriate time. Don't be like, someone's talking about something that bad that happened to them and be like, anyways, I got a 100 on my math test. What I try to do is I try to bring up other people more than myself because there's only one of me, but there's like 8 billion of other people. And you don't want to always be talking about yourself.
I like full-heartedly agree with you on everything you just said. And to add on to it, if someone's trying to tell you something bad or good and their contribution and achievements in that, I tend to not give relating stories. I know some people start saying their own personal experience stories relating to it, but honestly, in some cases, there's not an appropriate time for that. They may not want that. They may just want to rant. And then talking about how we make sure to include and celebrate individual achievements and stuff like that. If someone does something good, even if it's just a small thing, just congratulate them. Like if Erica was to text me, "Hey, I got 100 on my driving test," I'm like, "Oh my God, yay." Or if Andy would text me, "Oh, I got a squishmallow today," I'm like, "Yay, you got a squishmallow." Yeah, that's good. There's a lot of different ways that you can celebrate other people's achievements. Something that may not be achievement for you, but an achievement for someone else. They may want to feel good about it and they want people's approval, or they just like this makes them really happy. You don't want to bring them down by not acknowledging it or not saying something.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I was about to say something in the same like vein as that. If someone's like telling you something they accomplished, it's good to say, wow, that's so cool. How did you do it? And actively ask them what they did to accomplish it rather than bring up a story similar to it and say, that's cool. Reminds me of this one time I accomplished this. Like, it's good to celebrate your own achievements, but it should never come at the cost of putting someone else down.
It's great, actually, acknowledging other people's achievement because probably all they needed to hear was, "That's awesome. I'm so proud of you." Because I believe most of us don't say that enough. And if we do, some people have a hard time believing that. I know that's something I'm doing. People would congratulate me, but it's hard to accept sometimes. But it's also something that we need to acknowledge.
So, our next question is how should we focus on encouraging respect and inclusion? So, a really great way to make someone feel respected and included is to make them feel heard. I know that for me personally, just feeling heard and having someone actively listening to me, just listening, that is the best way to make someone feel respected. And if someone brings something up, is like, you know, if Kat tells me, "Hey, one of my students has been not listening lately and we've been trying to work with them, do you have any advice for me?" And I give her advice, a couple days later, I can text her and be like, "Hey, did everything go all right? Is the kid listening? Do you need more advice? Do you need to vent about it?" Because I know that if the roles were reversed and like Kat had done that for me, I would feel very heard and respected, and I would honestly just feel really happy that she took the time out of her day to, ask me about this specific thing that we talked about beforehand.
Yeah, that is a really good point. I live by this golden rule of treat others the way that you want to be treated. And so I think that includes like, hey, like if I want to be able to rant to someone or feel included in something, I need to make other people feel included. Like whenever we get new girls, I don't want them to feel left out because they don't know anybody or they don't feel comfortable. I want them to feel included. So I always treat them how I want to be treated.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think it's important to be really receptive to people. You know, it's human nature. Like sometimes we're not always going to agree, sorry. There's going to be times where we're going to have our disagreements, but I think it's important to be receptive and listen to what they have to say rather than try and bulldoze over them and not let them make their points because it's something important to them, and showing that you're listening to what's important to them is a good way to encourage respect. Like they'll respect you a lot more if you listen to what they have to say.
Guys, we all just share a brain.
Honestly.
Totally. Yeah.
Hive mind.
Yep.
Next question. What are some tips on solving problems and conflicts quickly and fairly?
Honestly, I think not avoiding conflict, because conflict is healthy a lot of times, but avoiding getting upset. I have a personal example of this. Recently, I found out that my friend was sort of withholding information. She wasn't lying to me, but she wasn't telling me the full truth. And I found this out by talking to two of our other friends. And so I went up to her and I said, "Hey, I'm not upset with you. I just want to know why this is happening." And we talked it out and we just took turns. I said what was bothering me and she explained what was happening. And 90% of it was we all forgot to talk to each other. And so just coming into it with an open mind and saying, "Hey, I'm not mad at you. I just would like to know what's happening because this thing has been bothering me."
Yeah, I really agree with the whole going in with it with like, I'm not mad at you, because I know there's been a lot of times with my friends where conflicts have gone unresolved for way too long because we thought the other person was mad at us or we didn't want to make them mad. And we had like this whole not wanting to communicate. So I think communication is a really big key to quickly and fairly solve these conflicts. When I teach with my kids, whenever they have conflicts with each other, I get both of their sides. And then after, like, I let them go off, but I make sure that they stay like away from each other for a little bit to cool down, like, because everyone needs a cool down period most of the time. And once they're cooled down, we all have a talk about it and they like explain what's happening. And then if there needs to be an apology, there's an apology. If they both agree that whatever was happening wasn't all that serious to them, then they just go off and play again.
All right, everyone. How can we make sure we're regularly asking for feedback and using it to improve our environment?
So, something that I tend to do when asking for feedback is if like I'm doing something, I always stop and I'm like, "Hey, is this okay? Do you think there's something I should change?" I get feedback regularly so that I can like make sure that whatever I'm doing is the best that I can. I'm not like thinking, "Oh my God, what are they gonna do? Are they gonna like it?" I'm not thinking that if I ask for feedback beforehand because I change it to how it would be good for me and for others. But if the situation calls for it, and if my friends need it, I will give them feedback on whatever they want. Just the other day, my best friend, Kiwi, she wants to learn how to get into more writing and note taking. She doesn't want to write stories or stuff like that, but she just wants to write. I gave her feedback on how I do it or how I've seen other people do it. She's found a great way to change her note taking and her writing so that it fits for her and makes her want to do it and not make it seem like it's pointless.
Yes, I 100% agree with what you said. And you pretty much took the words right out of my mouth because that was essentially what I was going to say.
I wholeheartedly agree with all of what you have been saying, Kat, and you too, Erika. For me, I'm a very indecisive person. And to make a decision, I usually would have like two people's input before I officially decide. I even sometimes flip a coin because of how indecisive I am. So I love hearing feedbacks, and how I do it is I ask them like, "Do you have any input?" or "What are your thoughts on the situation?" So that way it feels welcoming instead of just waiting for them, whereas they don't know if this is a situation they should put their input or not. And with that, I think we also need to keep in mind that by the end of it, it's still, again, what Kat said, just opinions, because it's up to us how we take that input, whether we use it to improve ourselves and make our environment better, or if their input might have been negative, doesn't mean we have to take it. It doesn't mean that we're gonna take that and like, oh, that's how I am. No, that's just how
Mm,
they think.
yeah.
It doesn't mean that it's set in stone, and we always have room for improvements. That brings us to our last question. How can we demonstrate acceptance and inclusivity through our action?
Okay. So, with me being a psychology major, this is actually something that comes up a lot is our actions and like basically our body language and all that. And if you have like a closed off body language, you look like you do not want to be approached or you do not want to like be around other people, especially if you're like talking to some person and you're like very like energetic and you're very open with them, but then it goes to talking with somebody else and you're like very closed off. It's like you're not being inclusive, but it could depend on if you don't like the person or if you have like a different opinion in your relationship. But it could lead to some people thinking that you aren't open to being around other people. You don't like want to be around people who don't share the same mindset as you. And honestly, most friendships, yeah, they may start out with like having the same like interest. Like me and Erica, our friendship started out with literally having the same interest in that anime, but we don't have the same interest as much anymore. But we're still inclusive of the people around us who don't necessarily share said mindset and who don't have the same opinions. And even if you don't agree with their opinion, I would still having an open body language, like a stance, and like being like, hey, yeah, I don't agree with you, but it's your opinion. It's what you believe, it's what you think. So I respect that and I'm going to accept and be inclusive of all opinions. And so like honestly for me, it's just always having an open mindset is how to demonstrate acceptance and not jumping the gun with being so quick to judge and be like, hey, I don't like you because of your opinion.
I 100% agree with that. I think it's very important when you're trying to demonstrate acceptance to keep an open mind and not be set in your own ideals and belief, because whatever someone else believes is no less valid than what you believe. I think a good way to bridge that gap is be willing to meet them halfway. Be willing to learn a little bit more about what they believe in, and they should be more willing to listen to what you believe in. And you both can get to know each other and where the other person is coming from, because how they were raised and what they believe in shapes who they are now.
Those were some amazing input, ladies. And for me, I live by the golden rule of not to judge anybody, whether it was right or wrong, because it's not my place to judge them. Who am I to say if they're right or wrong? And I'm not gonna shut them down because that's, again, it's all their opinions. And I try to demonstrate that with attentive listening and just going at it with curiosity. Whereas you listen to them, you ask questions, you show your interest, whether it be through your words or through your body language. I know this is something that I'm working on because I have a very close, like, where I'm always crossing my arms or like I have a resting RBF.
Yeah.
So sometimes kind of hard when you have a friendly nature, but like your face isn't exactly friendly. So that's something I'm working on, especially like younger girls, like 11. Sometimes I need to take a step back and put myself into their perspective, how they probably feel like everyone's so much older and like
Mm.
they might feel kind of out of place. So we take a step back, we look at how it feels to them and how they see things. And just from that alone makes them feel welcomed. I think those are some great ways we can demonstrate acceptance and inclusivity. Just that thought alone, they notice it. Even if we don't know it, they notice those little actions. We also have another girl, whereas she has a hard time with outside of our group, that it wasn't a very welcoming place. So when she met the younger girls, she had that feeling of like, I need to protect them. Like she was very closed off. It takes a while to feel like a safe place. But over time, she realized that she feels comfortable with us. If anything, she goes to us now. If there's any issue, she laughs with us. And we try to make them feel welcome. We include them in everything, even if it's something they're not interested. Yeah, we would push a little, but not like, oh, you need to do this. More of like, are you sure? We're not gonna judge you. Like, it would be really fun. Those are some great ways to show acceptance and inclusivity.
This has been a fantastic episode. We really hope you have enjoyed this episode and taken something from this episode for yourselves. I know that I particularly loved hearing all of us communicating in a very healthy and respectful way about what we agree on and what we have different views on.
Thank you to our incredible guests, Kat and Erica. We have definitely enjoyed having you today.
Please subscribe or follow our podcast on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. And tune in next month. Until we meet again, I'm Andi, and you're listening to Let's Talk About Leadership, Service, and Sisterhood, the podcast for teens by teens.